Why, as a Badgers fan, you should be pretty proud of the university right now and how they're handling the Xavier Lucas situation.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Thank you for being here. I'm your host, Ryan Herring, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering this team and this program and this university, and really appreciate everybody tuning in, helping us build this community. As always, we got to talk about Xavier Lucas. We got to talk about what the Wisconsin Badgers said about it, what the Big Ten said about it, what's next. And at the end, I think we got to talk about the Big Ten and the SEC just saying, screw it. The NCAA is done. We have to kind of step up and just assume leadership of this thing because it's a disaster. And it's time for the adults to kind of take over in that room. But let's start with Xavier Lucas. So transfer, like, it's the weirdest thing. He wanted to leave. Wisconsin didn't put his name in the portal, and then he just kind of decided, I'm going to go anyway. He rolled at Miami. It's done. And I remember when that happened a couple days ago, I said, this is just like no rules anymore. There's nothing. So it just at any point, players can just transfer, right? There's no rules. There's no regulations. There's no nothing. It just seems absurd and ridiculous. And this isn't really a Xavier Lucas thing. This was bound to happen at some point because there's no regulation set up. There's no rules set up. There's no enforceable body of governance that can stop anything or do anything. So Xavier Lucas this was bound to happen at some point. It just so happens that it's Xavier Lucas, Miami, and Wisconsin, right? That are the first to kind of get to this specific set of crossroads. What I led up in the beginning is if you're a Wisconsin fan, and obviously that's what we are here, I think you got to be really proud of the university for this. And my original take on this, and if you remember, there's a comment in here from Pavel. He said, Ryan, are you going to be taking back your statements from earlier? My statements from earlier were, I don't really know what the win here is with Wisconsin. Like, the further this drags out, I worry that it'll impact recruiting. I don't really know what the win is. The longer I've been following this more, I'm just like, screw it, do the right thing. And that's what Wisconsin's doing. Like, screw it. Like, if you're going to go down this path, stand on principle. And that's what the Badgers are doing. So I guess I kind of am taking back my statements. I still don't really know what the win is for Wisconsin ultimately, but let's get into the statement from the program. Let's get into the statement from the Big Ten. And again, why I think Wisconsin should get some applause for how they're handling this. Wisconsin released a statement, really their first public words on this. Obviously, Xavier Lucas's attorney, Darren Heitner, has been living on Twitter. Like, his words are everywhere. So that side of the story is out. And Wisconsin has just kind of bided their time a little bit. Wisconsin essentially said, I'm going to paraphrase this, but that statement's out there. I encourage everybody to go read it. A couple of big things that I want to point out. Said that Xavier Lucas signed a Big Ten issued template, a form, basically to compete at University of Wisconsin for the next 2 years. Separately entered into an agreement with the Varsity Collective, which is the NIL arm of Wisconsin. And additionally, there's credible information indicating impermissible contact between Xavier Lucas and the University of Miami football program prior to Xavier Lucas's request to enter the transfer portal. Direct interference with another institution's committed player and contractual interest is prohibited by NCAA tampering rules and the law. So here's the thing. What if you're Xavier Lucas and you signed a deal with Wisconsin to play here for a couple of years, and then you signed a deal with the collective? You can't just go and a week later leave. And here, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know all the loopholes in this, but I can tell you what the right thing is. And the right thing is you don't agree in principle, get money, and then leave a week or two later. That's the right thing. I think we can all agree on that. There's going to be Miami fans and lawyers and hosts of a different podcasts are going to say, well, technically Wisconsin can't. Sure, technically, but they're doing the right thing. This is the right thing. They're standing on principle. They're correctly saying you literally just signed an agreement to be here. You took money, or you're about to take money, and then a week or two later, you're just going to bounce and think that's okay. That's not okay. That wouldn't be okay if your kid did that, right? If your kid entered into a homework contract with a teacher, you would hold them accountable to that. Like, you're an 18, 19-year-old young man at this point. And if you're Xavier Lucas, I like Xavier Lucas. I've talked about that before. This was bound to happen at some point. He's been on the show. Like, I really liked the conversation I had with him and his dad. I've talked to both of them, but you signed a deal to be here. Just don't sign that deal and then go to Miami and report like every other player. This is called accountability. This is called being accountable for the decisions and actions that you make. And Wisconsin's has chosen to kind of draw a line in the sand there and say, no, like, this is not okay. It's not cool. This is not how we're going to operate. And if you want to operate like that, we're not gonna stand by and let you take our money, take our resources, take our time, give us your word, and then just bounce 2 weeks later. I think there's there's some nobility there in standing on a principle a little bit. Do again wonder what the ultimate win is for Wisconsin? Like how at the end of this does Wisconsin come out with some kind of tangible victory that really helps their program? I'm not sure, but I will say this: I think it sets a precedent in the locker room. I think it shows that we want people who are going to be loyal to the word that they give. I told my kid the other day, and by the way, Wisconsin's not perfect in this either. Like, I'm not trying to get on a high horse here. There's regulations that need to be put in place to keep everybody in check on all sides. But I told my kid the other day, there's only a couple things in this world nobody can take from you. Your word is one of them. Like you're the only person that can give away your good name. And if you tell somebody, I'm going to be here for the next 2 years, you sign a contract, you take money, allegedly, you do all of those things, and then 2 weeks later you leave. I don't know why Wisconsin's going to be painted as the bad guy here. I love that the Big Ten also came out with a statement. The Big Ten came out and said, the Big Ten Conference, the quote, the Big Ten Conference stands fully in support of the University of Wisconsin regarding the contractual agreement between student athlete Xavier Lucas and the Wisconsin football program. These actions undermine the efforts of its own conference. This is key. As the ACC continues to collaborate with other P4 conferences in developing a sustainable framework for college sports. So the Big Ten's basically saying, listen, this doesn't reflect well on your conference. And we all know there's two big guys at the table. It's the SEC and the Big Ten. Every other conference is fighting for scraps to some degree. It just is what it is. And the Big Ten's kind of saying, listen, we're going to do it a certain way. And if you want to continue to coexist, this is a shot across the bow. If you kind of want to continue to coexist in this world of college football, we're not going to operate in that sense. And that's where, again, I think, and I'm going to get into this in the next segment, I think it's time for the Big Ten and the SEC, maybe a few other power players, to step up and say, okay, like enough's enough. This doesn't work. The NCAA is not working. We have to find a way forward that makes sense. And we'll set up governance. We'll set up rules. We'll set up revenue sharing contracts, and we'll make sense of this collectively as the biggest power players in the sport, because this kind of stuff is nonsense. It really is. And again, this was bound to happen at some point. I'm going to get some comments here if anyone has any comments. Isaiah Place just says, shout out John Blackwell. Yeah, let's go. Kyle Matry says, Miami sickening, Ryan, tampered as far back as July. So I had heard that Miami was very involved in Xavier Lucas, trying to flip him back, trying to get involved. And a lot of programs do that. A lot of programs, tampering is everywhere in college sports right now. But I do like that the Big Ten and this here's the other thing. Wisconsin is not putting that into their statement that there is tangible proof of this happening unless they have that proof. Wisconsin's not dumb, right? Unless they have that proof. And B, if it wasn't egregious, right? This is not like, I can almost guarantee you, this is not like a text that somebody sent that's connected somehow to Miami. It's like, hey, wouldn't it be great to be a Cane? There's going to be something tangible here. And I kind of think Miami does not want this to get into discovery. I imagine Miami's going to want this to go away much, much sooner rather than later. And there's probably some stuff there that is above the standard line of tampering that kind of exists everywhere in college football. Fall says, been away for a while, off is looking good, Ryan. Thank you. Yeah, Isaiah Place says contractual obligations to CBA is needed immediately. Tyler Strieber says the win is for college football as a whole. Yeah, I think this could be something that spurs more change. And I didn't think it would originally. I really didn't. I thought this would kind of just, go. It would be settled out of court. It would go kind of silently into the night, and then But this is getting much bigger than I originally thought it would be. And again, I applaud Wisconsin for doing what's right, for kind of standing on their word and trying to hold another player who's not a kid, a young man, to his word as well. I think it's definitely worth applauding in this era of college football. All right, we'll take a quick second here. I want to come back, talk a little bit more about the Big Ten, SEC, maybe stepping up into more of a leadership role, in which we'll get your comments. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show. Quick second to say thank you for tuning in. Today's episode brought to you by our great friends over at Prizepicks. Prizepicks is phenomenal. They are the best spot to get all your daily fantasy. They've made it easy. They have injury insurance in case you lose a guy or player off your roster or your team or your lineup. You can continue. You're not going to take a huge hit like you will in other fantasy leagues. Prizepicks is the best thing to happen to daily fantasy. It's the only daily fantasy platform, again, where they have the injury insurance platform. So you're allowed to stay and play even if one of your players gets hurt. They are easy to use. The reason I really like them is some of the longer fantasy football leagues, some of the longer fantasy sports require so much time, and you're battling against a bunch of people who do this for like a living, who read every fantasy magazine. I just don't have time for that. Prizepicks is easy, more or less on a couple different players, stats, whether it's touchdowns, yards. It's really simple to set up, really simple to get started. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Code LOCKEDONCollege. Prizepicks, run your game. Today's episode also brought to you by our great friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the official partner of the official sportsbook partner of the NFL, the official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. FanDuel is fast, it's easy, it's simple. Plus, it's a great time with all these sports going on. You have NFL playoffs. I still have one more college football playoff game, NBA, college basketball, which is always a ton of fun to bet on. FanDuel is here for all your parlays, futures, teasers, spreads. Everything is super easy. The user interface is clean. Customer support is great. The payouts are really quick, unlike some other sites where it feels like you're trying to extort the mob to get your money. FanDuel is quick, easy, fast, simple. Again, the official sportsbook of the NFL, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Just visit FanDuel.com today. Get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook of the NFL. All right, let's jump back into this. I want to get some of your comments. Where are you guys at on this Xavier Lucas thing? Is it something where you want Wisconsin just to move on? Do you think there's a win here? Are you proud of the university for standing on principle? Is this just bound to happen regardless? Let's get in here. A couple more questions here. Roger Dodger says this case will destroy the idea of the transfer portal. My Lord Lester says, yeah, move on, get smarter with your contracts in the future. That was kind of my original take, Lord Lester. Yeah, because I really didn't know what the win is here. But the longer this is drawn on, the longer I felt like somebody kind of needs to draw a line in the sand, somebody to draw that line, to pull that reference from Paul Chris, but somebody kind of has to say, no, this is not working. And this is kind of an egregious example. This is similar to the Caden Proctor situation, potentially, where, he went to Iowa, I think got some financial money and then just bolted to Bama. And if Iowa had done that, as Badger fans, I feel like we probably would have applauded it, right? We probably would have said, yeah, that's nonsense. Hold the kids accountable. If they're going to take money and they're going to give you their word. Yeah, freedom of movement. Absolutely. Freedom of movement, but still do the right thing, right? Freedom of movement doesn't mean freedom of movement and the player's ability to transfer and play where they want and play closer to home and play closer to family, play with a coach they connect with more, play in a system they like more, whatever it is. Awesome. Like, all those reasons are valid to leave now. This is a thing in college football, but still do the right thing. Then don't sign an agreement with Wisconsin and take money and then leave a week or two later, right? That freedom of movement doesn't preclude doing the right thing. And I think that's where Wisconsin is. And I don't know if ultimately, again, I'm not a lawyer. There's plenty of lawyers on Twitter if you guys want to go find some. But I do know what the right thing is. And I do know what accountability is. And I do know what I would tell my kid if he said and signed an agreement and then a week later tried to bolt, right? This comes with it. If you want to be in an era of college football where you can move wherever you want and have more rights as a player, well, that also comes with the responsibility of, doing what you say you're going to do to some degree. Bo Dragon does say move on. What a waste of time fighting with an 18-year-old kid. Michael Wagner says, has the ACC backed Miami? I haven't seen anything. Ryan Willie says Locked On Canes claims it was an MOU, not binding in. MOU is a memorandum of understanding of agreement. I've also seen that called an MOA. Yeah, I don't think it's binding because that the legal resolution to create this template isn't enacted yet. It's supposed to get passed this summer potentially. But again, I feel like you're finding loopholes without acknowledging the fact that it's still a shiesty thing to do to leave a program after taking financial compensation and agreeing to agreements with both the school and the varsity collective. It's just not the right thing to do. And technically, I don't know where that leaves Wisconsin. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to be interested to see how it plays out. Some more questions in here. Patrick says they should make an example out of him. I think they should make an example out of this scenario, not him. Because I don't personally want anything bad to happen to Xavier Lucas. I want to be super clear on that. But they do need to take this and say, and use this as a scenario, an example of why change needs to happen. Like you have you can't have players taking agreements, taking money, and then leaving 2 weeks later. You can't have players with the ability to leave whenever they want throughout the course of a year, because then you're never going to be able to build a roster. Like you have to have some semblance of stability, roster stability, of control in the sport, while also allowing players the freedom of movement and the freedom to get paid. Like, you have to align these things a little better. And I think this is an example. This is a scenario where change is going to be spurred because of it. So we'll see. That's kind of my take on it. It's odd. It's weird. I think a lot of change is going to be coming up. I do like Xavier Lucas. I really wish nothing ill with the Xavier Lucas, but I do respect where Wisconsin is standing on with this one. I think they're standing on principle. I think they're standing on really, you should honor your word. You should do what you say you're going to do, and you should not agree to a school and then leave 2 weeks later. So anyway, on Wisconsin, really do appreciate all you guys. Definitely want Bo Dragon. Look, this is a fair point. Bo Dragon says, but it's okay for coaches to leave with the contract. And he goes on and also adds, coaches leave with years on contracts all the time. Yeah, no, listen, it's a fair point. Like, I'm never going to come up here and say this is the perfect scenario, or you're never going to have the perfect situation. But you also can't have players leaving 365 days a year. You're never going to be able to build a roster. What's going to happen next year when a player wants to leave in September or October before a game? Like, if there's really no rules or no regulations, like, imagine the NFL where players could leave whenever they wanted. Like, you have to have contracts in place. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It just doesn't. So I agree with you. It is a bit of a double standard there, but you have to have something in place where players have to honor agreements. Otherwise, you're just never going to be able to build rosters. And Isaiah Place says, yeah, needs to be a hierarchy in sports. Jay Berg also said coaches don't take next year's money with them. So we'll wrap it up there. Really do appreciate everybody tuning in as always. Have a couple really good guests coming up this week that are going to be a lot of fun as well on Wisconsin. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let us know in the comments where you think this is going to go as always. Yeah, it's an interesting one. On Wisconsin, we will talk later.